So before we start, make sure that you have a copy of this worksheet. If you don't, pause the video, go to the Unit 2 calendar, click on it, and click on where it says Exploring Inverses, and you can print a copy of this at home. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at inverse functions. The inverse of a relation is a reflection over the line y equals x. And I just want to remind you what the line y equals x looks like. Okay, that is the parent function of lines. And if I plug -1 in, I get -1. If I plug 0 in, I get 0. If I plug 1 in, I get 1. The parent function of lines will look like this. Okay, so I'm going to flip these lines, these points over the line y equals x. But it also is exactly what it sounds. It's an inverse. So the other shortcut I could do is invert my x and y coordinates. So we're going to look at that. So the first question I have to do is draw the inverse of the following graphs on the same axis. So I'm going to look at this point right here. This point right here is the point -1, 1. -1, +1. The inverse of that would be just turn it around. 1, -1. And it would be right here. And notice that I basically folded that pink line and moved this point from the left side of the line to the right side of the line, or the top to the bottom. Okay? And this amount of distance is the same as that amount of distance. Okay, we're going to look at this point right here. Whoops, didn't mean to move that. Right there. Okay, that is the point 1, -2. So if I take 1, -2, and I turn it around, it's going to be -2, 1. How hard is that? -2, 1. So it will be right there. Okay, so now let's look again. From this point to this point, it looks like I just folded on the pink line, and this point would end up on top of each other. So you would go through and do all of that. So now I want to know if my inverse is a function. So let's start with the original. If I pass a vertical line test through it, oops, that's not a function right there. So the vertical line test says that this is not a function. Okay, if I flip all those others, that guy's going to go across there. This guy's going to go across here. This guy is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, -3. So I'm going to go to -3, 4. It will go there. This top guy is -1, 6. So I'm going to go to 6, -1. Is that all my points? I think that's all my points. So now let's try the vertical line test. Wonder if this will work. Yeah. It looks like the vertical line test for that one works. Okay. Here is the line y equals x again. Okay, so it goes through -1, -1, -2, -2, -3, -3, -4, -4. So make sure you get your line y equals x in there very well. And I'm just going to flip, since I have a whole line, I know the original is a function. It passes the vertical line test. There's no repeating x's. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple points off this guy. Okay, so I'm going to take this point right here, which is 2, 0, and that would go to 0, 2. This point right up here is 0, 4, so it would go to 4, 0. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to connect that with a line. and that would be my inverse. So now let's look. If I were to fold my paper along that red line, would this end up over here, and would this end up over here? Yes, you can see their inverses. Now, is the blue line an inverse? Yes, it is. Okay. All right, this guy. So let's flip a couple of these. This is 0, 4, so I'm going to make it 4, 0. This point right here is 1.5, 0, so I'm going to make it 0, 1.5. This point right here is negative 1.5, 0, so I'm going to go to 0, negative 1.5. And I'm going to connect it the best I can. Okay, now the original obviously does pass the vertical line test, so the original would be yes. The new blue one obviously does not pass the vertical line test, so the new one would be no. Here's an interesting thing. To test if something is a function, I do the vertical line test. To test if the inverse of it is a function, I can do a horizontal line test. So looking at the original right here, see how the horizontal line test doesn't work on the black guy? Okay, it hits twice. That tells me that my inverse is not going to be a function. So I don't really have to graph it, and we'll look at that probably some more on. Okay, so we have pause, and I'm going to write something down. So there are two tests. Make sure you copy that down. So we're moving down to H, and we're going to see if this is a function. Here's my original guy. Vertical line test pass. So yes, my original is a function. Now I'm going to try the horizontal line test. So using this same line, I'm going to try the horizontal line test. And if I do the horizontal line test across this relation, I can see that the inverse is not going to be a function. So the inverse is not a function. Now, to graph that guy, let's get this out of the way. And we're going to do total estimates. So I'm just going to show you the points I'm graphing. I'm going to graph that point, that point, that point, that point, that point, and that point. Okay, I'm going to pause and write the coordinates of those points. So these are all the points. So I'm going with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. This is actually a graph that you will see next year in pre-cal. This is the cosine graph, I believe. Now to do the inverse, I'm just going to switch the x and the y. So those are my new ordered pairs, and now I'm going to put them on the graph. And this is what it would look like. The blue graph would be the inverse. If we take this line again, okay, and put a vertical line down. It's not vertical, but you can see that it'll hit more than once, so the inverse would not be a function. Okay, now I'm going to pause the video. I'd like you to go ahead and do number 5. Figure out if this is a function, get the points for the inverse, and is the inverse a function? And these are the answers that you should have gotten. So all I do is switch my x and y. So notice my first ordered pair is 4, negative 2, negative 2, negative 1. Okay, so yes, that would be a function. The last thing we need to do is, if I give you an equation, how do you find the inverse? So again, think about inverse. I'm just switching x and y, switching x and y. So I'm actually going to pick this x up and switch it with that y. I'm going to pick this x and y up and just switch them. I'm not switching anything attached to them. So the x and the y switch. If we even want to be more clear, we'll put them in a different color. The X and the Y switch. That's all. But now I have to solve for Y. So I'm going to subtract that 4 to the X and divide everything by 2. So this is 1 divided by 2x minus 2 equals y. This little -1 means the inverse, and you must have that. So this guy and this guy are inverses of each other. Now I'd like you to try 7, and I want you to bring it with you to class tomorrow so we can see it.